My name is Kayla Ellis. I am the Business Communications Manager at the Community Foundation of Herkimer and Oneida Counties, and also a co-lead on our Mohawk Valley Gives giving campaign. You should feel very excited and really part of a community here. So all of the attendees that are on this call with you today are peer nonprofits that also participated in Mohawk Valley Gives. So we really have become kind of this little collective of organizations that are all, striving towards a common goal of raising funds for our organizations through Mohawk Valley Gives. So I just want to thank each and every one of you for your time today. We really appreciate it. I know Thanksgiving week can be hectic for some people, maybe a little bit slower for others. So we appreciate you taking the time to sit with us this morning. We're thinking that this presentation will run probably 45 minutes to an hour, depending on questions. So speaking of questions, everyone, I believe, is on mute currently. If you can just remain on mute for the duration of the presentation, that would be great. If you do have questions throughout, please keep in mind that we are going to do a Q&A session at the very end. So if you want to save those questions, and then we can either do enter your question into the chat or raise your hand, either or. We will get to those towards the end of the presentation. If you do have to hop off at any time during the presentation, we are recording it as we speak. So we'll be sharing out an email after this call with the full recording. And also if you wanted to share it with, any of your team members. So again, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I am going to pass it off to the amazing Kristen Smith, who is also our fund and systems strategist. I think I got that title right at the Community Foundation, and my partner and co-lead for Mohawk Valley Gives. So welcome, Kristen.
Thank you, Kayla. You're too kind. As usual, but I apologize. I think I have a little bit of a scratchy voice. The sinuses have been kicking in, so bear with me, please. But we're so glad to have everybody here this morning. I want to thank you as well and echo Kayla's sentiments. We really have built a community here, and it's pretty amazing. We're going to take some time today to reflect on the success that we've seen, but then look forward and really, make sure that we're all geared up in a way that will only ensure further success down the road. I have to say that, when I reflect on these 3 years of MV Gives, and I think about the almost 3 decades that I have spent in the world of philanthropy, I can easily say I have never experienced such incredible energy and passion like exists here in Mohawk Valley. So huge congratulations to all of the organizations that were involved and your teammates and everybody that made this possible. So we're going to take a quick look at our results again, because why not, right? They're amazing. 2024 was just a year to remember so far. $5.2 million raised. And I know we're all on mute, but take a minute and give yourself a little clap. Supporting 325 organizations, the growth has truly been nothing short of impressive since year one. Our donors continue to impress us. 8,200 plus donors this year, over 12,000 individual donations. And all of this really comes together as puzzle pieces, I like to say, puzzle pieces that build a larger picture that we can dive into regarding each donor's philanthropy snapshot, so to speak. So real quick, it's nice to see the visual, I think. The 3 years that we've had, when you look at the dollars raised, the number of donors, number of gifts, and from year one, the dollars especially, we've more than doubled those dollars. It's just absolutely amazing. But now what? where do we go from here with all of the data and the information, and what are we learning from all this, and how can we really put that back into play in order to ensure success long term for the organizations, not just about specifically within MV Gives, but overall for each of these organizations that are here today and with us in the campaign. What is this really doing for them in the long term? So we're going to talk stewardship. It's like, we're off to the races now, right? Let the stewardship begin. And we took some time to, I don't want to say, pare it down, but to try to look at it in a pretty manageable perspective of 4 areas: identifying your team, gathering the tools that you'll need, building out the plan, and of course, always evaluating and planning ahead. So we're going to break these down one by one this morning, starting first with your team. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have already done some of this, and maybe not just with MV Gives, but in general with your organizations. And I hope that today, as we go through these steps, that at least everyone will come away with some new tip or trick or a little aha moment that will be helpful in some manner. So if I'm repeating something that you've already done, I apologize. I hope maybe it'll just help raise a red flag for you as a reminder or whatnot. So first of all, this shouldn't be a real heavy lift, right? This concept of stewardship and being able to thank people should be an easy grasp, right? I love saying I'm in the business of thanking people for what they do and what they give to our organizations. So when we think about a team, we want to think about the individuals that can have an impact on our donors, after the gift has been made, right? After the campaign has closed. Where can we continue to have that impact? And, there are going to be cases where you really want to have the, leadership of even your board may be involved, and we'll talk a little bit more about when and how those things might happen. You'll have other staff, hopefully, depending on the size of your organization. We use the term customers, and customers can be used really loosely. Obviously, it's a retail term. However, the work that all of you are doing every single day touches people, touches lives, right? So they are your customers. You're delivering either a direct service in some way, you're helping people connect to a service or resources, or you're advocating and working for those things to be available down the road. So you do have a customer base. So you may find that there are a couple of people within that realm that have, really benefited from what your organization is doing. And they're sort of like, your cheerleaders, your ambassadors, and you might want to grab a couple of those to help execute your stewardship plan and serve as part of your stewardship team. And then, of course, volunteers. I'm probably safe in saying that almost every single organization, whether here on the webinar today, in general, as part of the MV Gives campaign, or even in the Mohawk Valley, has volunteers at some point in time doing something. Volunteers are key, obviously, to all of our philanthropy work. And what better way to reward, a volunteer than to bring them into the fold in one of the nicest pieces of the work we do, thanking our donors. So what tools are we talking about? Well, in this case specifically with Mohawk Valley Gives, there are 3 that really stick out. First of all, your GiveGab donation reports, and we're going to talk a little bit more about the specifics within them and how to make the most out of them. This year, new, available to you all when the webinar is over, is an analytics dashboard. If you attended Mohawk Valley Gives University over the summer and took one of the data sessions that I led, you would have gotten a printed hard copy of this dashboard if you were a returning organization. And this year, we've been able to make it available to you electronically. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more. And then, of course, biggest tool, right? That stewardship team that we talked about. So you want to get yourself teed up to be ready and to launch with them. So we're going to break down and talk a little bit about the 2 reports first. So GiveGab donation reports. I really hope that this screenshot looks familiar, minus the bubbles. When you're in the GiveGab platform and you are on your dashboard, I want to give a shout out here to the DeMeo Family Fund because I stole a screenshot from their page. You will use the menu on the left-hand side. Under reports, you will select donations, and it's going to give you this multi-menu drop-down screen here that you see behind the bubbles. And this is where you have different opportunities to select the data that you want. If you filter by giving day or site, you want to make sure you are selecting Mohawk Valley Gives 2024. The current year. Now, you might also have a moment where you want to look back at something, so you can also choose a previous year campaign. But you can also filter much more specifically by dates if you really are just looking for a particular, on the day of. So on September 20th itself, if you're looking for, the week and whatnot, you can get more specific there. Once you choose those, items, then you are going to scroll down to the bottom of the page. What will happen is all of that information is going to populate, but at the bottom of the page, you will be able to choose Export CSV, and that will appear as a downloadable file for you. And you will go ahead and use that file to filter and pull out more data. We're going to come back to that conversation in a minute. So the analytics dashboard here, this is done through Microsoft Power BI, and I am so blessed to be part of the systems team here at the foundation and working with my colleague, Jackie Klotzbach, who is just amazing, building out these dashboards for us and really organizing data behind the scenes. So here, you'll have a link that we will send to you in the email after the webinar. And when you use this link, you will arrive at the main page dashboard like you see here. And up in that top right corner, you're going to click on Results by Organization. When you do that, you will see that it brings to a much more detailed look. And in that drop-down menu on the top left, you actually will use that drop-down menu, to locate your organization. They're listed by alphabetical order. One item that you can't see here in this screenshot, unfortunately, is that in the top right-hand corner, it'll appear just above the results by organization. There'll be another little button, and it's called Focus. And this Focus button will actually allow you to enlarge the different sections of this dashboard view, so it's easier to work with and really kind of dive in. Similarly, you can use the other headings to dive in deeper to the data, as you can see, that relates to participants, donors, on the day of, and even the maps. If you've had a minute to click on that and really you get to see where are your dollars coming from, like literally geographically. It's always interesting because you just never know. You might see that one donation that pops up, that was from somebody in Florida, and it's worth a reach out to figure out what the connection is and how they have this affinity still for your organization or the Mohawk Valley. So those individual menus will allow you to drill down a bit. So you've got your people, you've got your team, you've got your analytics, your tools, right? And now we need to literally jump in and build out that stewardship plan. So one of the first pieces that seems to be helpful is to be able to segment your donors into some categories. Now, these categories are going to be different for every organization based on what your needs are and what you're looking for. But some of the options that seem to be the most popular are looking first at, gift amount, and kind of grouping them. A lot of folks like to consider a certain threshold where it's considered more of a major gift. And that might be different for each organization. Another important piece is to think about the donors who are new to your organization and those that are, returning. I think they each warrant their own sort of attention and way about connecting with them to keep them if they're new, obviously. And if they're repeating, keeping that repeat donor is just as important, but it takes a different approach perhaps, because now it's about, gee, how did you come to us but more about why are you still here giving to us, right? What can we do to continue that? Another important piece is that this year, we saw even another increase, I believe, in the number of donors that covered the fees related to their donation, so credit card fee, and the platform fee. That is a huge indicator of, their interest, right? Their passion, their capacity to support, overall. So that's something that is worth, looking at. You've got donors who are returning, from year one now, we're 3 years in. And if you've had a donor there from year one on, let's say they're giving at a little bit of a higher level, then to me, that shows you an opportunity to maybe bring them in, as a matching or challenge donor in the next year. They seem to be, a little more willing, a little more interested. Right? So as we think about the different segments and you define them for what works best for your organization, then you're going to think about the deliverables. So, are you doing handwritten thank you note cards to a certain group? And then is there another group that maybe is escalated up a bit in order to get a phone call? Maybe that phone call is going to come from your board chair. Maybe that phone call is from another volunteer. Maybe there's somebody that you want to bring in physically. You want to do an in-person engagement with them. You want to give them an opportunity to see the work that you're doing, hands-on. We've been fortunate here, as a quick example, to bring some donors into places like the Utica Public Library, Sculpture Space Studio, and let them sort of see, see the dollars at work, let's say, right? And then that gives another level of interest and energy. So those are just some of the options, and we can still come back to talk more about that if anybody has questions at the end. But ultimately then, you're deciding who's going to deliver the appreciation, like I mentioned. Is it somebody that really you think at this point in their relationship with your organization, it's time for the next level? So maybe that is where you bring in your board chair, your executive director, a real key volunteer that has been instrumental in executing the mission of your organization. So there's lots of options here. And ultimately, the real goal of any stewardship action is truly to make every donor feel valued and involved in your organization, right? They should be inspired every time they give to you. What they get back, what they see, should inspire them to continue that relationship.
Can I just add one other thing to that,
Yes,
Kristen, before we
please.
move on to the next slide?
Sure.
I feel like some of you may have already done some of this, but even if you haven't, and it seems like, well, MV Gives was in September and now it's, we're creeping up on December. It's actually kind of timely if you haven't, because it allows you to kind of think about what those dollars from MV Gives have done or are going to do for your organization going into the next year, into 2025, and being able to, let those donors know about that. It's also timely because of the nature of it being the holiday season. A lot of people are sending out holiday cards or, just year-end giving. So it's kind of like there's this natural connection, don't you think, Kristen?
Absolutely. I think it's we're in the midst of the season of thankfulness, right? So there's really no wrong opportunity, to say thank you. And we can't say it enough. I've always said to people, two things that I feel are really important, whether it's in business or in your personal life. You can never over communicate, and you can never thank somebody too much. So I think Kayla's absolutely right. Even though the month of October just flew by, we easily can go out to those donors now and say, as we reflect in this season of gratitude, we are immensely grateful for your contribution during the Mohawk Valley Gives campaign. We're looking forward to an exciting year. We hope you'll be part of it. There's a million ways that we can capture that now, and it's certainly not too far out. So once you've done this, You've got your team, you've got your tools, you're deciding what you're going to do, what those deliverables are. But now we need to also take a minute and look at things because, I think one of the great opportunities that's come with MV Gives has been the opportunity to assess things that organizations were doing on a regular basis that maybe could be, sunsetted to some degree and replaced by the efforts of Mohawk Valley Gives. And in some ways, maybe some of the efforts could have been streamlined, made a little bit more efficient. And part of that is definitely, taking a minute to evaluate and then plan ahead to really, I'd say, set yourself up for success down the road, right? So if you take a minute and you look at all of these efforts, that you've made, and you might be surprised to really stop and see, geez, we took Mrs. and Mr. Jones, for coffee because they had made a $250 donation all 3 years to our organization. And now you find out from a colleague on your team that, they've come in and they've talked about planned giving opportunities, right? Like, wow, what an amazing, step into the next level. You find out that some other donor comes to your organization because of that couple that, gave 3 years, you're now working with them. They help you naturally recruit and bring in new donors just by virtue of, conversation, right? If they're loving your organization, you're loving on them, they're going to share that. So we can look at those things and think also about what those future engagement opportunities are. So let's say you're doing a handful of phone calls to donors this year to thank them for MV Gives and have a little conversation, and you start to learn more about them. So let's say, you've got a donor on the call, you're thanking them, and you happen to say, gee, we've got a lot of great things on the horizon, and they say, oh, like what? You start to talk about a new project that maybe you're launching in the coming year. And next thing you know, you start to learn, oh, well, geez, I used to work in such and such. I have a connection over here. This might be a good, thing that we can connect your organization with my colleague. And you see those opportunities, right, to be more engaged. Maybe that's when you decide that a couple months down the road, you want to come back to that person, invite them to come in person and see parts of, that project or service unfolding. So they get to not only, conceptualize it, they get to see it in action. And I think that impact is immeasurable, really. It's tough to actually figure out how much good that would do. But at that point, then, you do want to note some changes, right? Maybe you decide after doing a handful of note cards that are handwritten or hand signed by someone, maybe that isn't the way you want to go with that group next year. Maybe timing wise, maybe you decide you wanted to switch around things, and you want to do phone calls first and then you want to do the emails. But really, it's about getting that feedback from the people on your team that were helping you execute those items. They are the ones engaging with the donors, and then bring back to you any feedback or, reflection type moments. And then it gives you that opportunity, like I said, to stage things going forward. We're learning too, right? So we had a lot of handwritten cards, thanks to one of our teammates here, go out the door after MV Gives. And honestly, we could do some work on those things even before the giving day. We could really think about what we want that card to look like, what the pre-printed sentiment's going to look like before we start to add in our handwriting, So there are things that it definitely is worth taking the time to evaluate and then edit or redraft and start to get it staged before the next cycle of the giving day. So I'm going to pause here because I could talk all day long about any one of these areas with 1,000 different examples of things. But we're doing awesome on time. So I definitely want to hear from folks, hear what's working well for you too, if you have a minute to share something that you've already done this year after the campaign, and obviously to answer some questions. So Kayla, I'll let you hop back in here and help us with gathering those questions.
Sure. Yeah, if you have questions, please type them into the chat. I know there's also a Q&A feature on here, but since we're answering them live, if you can just type them into the chat. We did have one from Anne Marie. If you could just recap how everyone will be able to access that analytics dashboard.
Sure. So after the webinar, Tiffany Thompson will be sending out an email. That email is going to go to everybody that we have in our record from NV Gives this year that is connected to an organization that participated. So whether your organization had one primary person or two, all of you will get an email that will include the slides. And will include a link that will bring you right to that dashboard. You can then bookmark that link if you'd like in your own web browser, or just hold on to that email for sure.
Thanks, Kristen. I don't see any questions right now. Maybe people are still typing, or maybe we covered everything, which is good.
Maybe I could.
But I have one thing I can add in the meantime.
Sorry, I can share one other quick thing too.
Oh,
Kayla,
sure,
if you don't
sure.
mind. So, you know, we talked about all of these little quick examples, you know, and I recognize, you know, everyone's time is really valuable. So, if there is any in particular piece here, like that we've talked about that you or a colleague or a couple of your team members, you know, want to dive into more, you can certainly reach out to us to have a longer conversation. Some of the items that I think get easily missed, specifically here with Mohawk Valley Gives, are some of the stewardship pieces that are pre-designed for you, still in the platform, in the toolkit. There is a stewardship section where you can still download messages, whether they're to create an email thank you, an actual printed thank you. So don't forget, you know, that toolkit is not just about leading up to the campaign and launching it or putting media pieces out, but there's tools there that really you can adapt and use all year round for your organization. So definitely, you know, feel free to take a look back at that. You have your dashboard there in GiveGab. That's yours to log in and out of as much as you want, you know, even in between the campaigns.
That's
I think
great,
we had a
Kristen.
question pop up.
Yes, we have a question from Kay. Can you share an example of a stewardship initiative that had a significant impact on donor retention?
Sure, I can actually, I'll share two. So one, and hi Kay, thank you for joining us. Two things that stick out to me immediately. One are these behind the scenes, fund holder behind the scenes, you know, engagement opportunities. And I've seen this happen, you know, not just here at the foundation, in roles that I've worn hats for in the past, that we really see like a reinvigoration of a longtime donor or repeat donor when they get to feel part of the work that you're doing, right? So bringing a donor along with us to meet the people who are producing, you know, the services or, you know, are getting the things to happen right in the community and be there live. It just brings a whole nother level to the experience, you know, that you can't you can't reproduce, you know, just in a newsletter or in a news piece even. You know, but to see it in person and feel it is amazing. And I've seen a lot of good come of that. The other piece that I've seen that is maybe it's less invasive, I guess I'd say, is that I had an opportunity in one role to work with a marketing team where we created impact reports. So we were able to look at two or three really, you know, remarkable donors that had a history with the organization. And we took some time to stop and really build out a picture of what their impact had been on the organization, in the community, you know, with what that organization did for the community. And we literally made it like a coffee table print book, so to speak. Took them to dinner, presented them with this item that really became a legacy piece for them, you know, that their family could see what they had done. I can tell you specifically in one case, it led to a legacy giving opportunity, and that family set up their estate planning to be very, very generous to the organization. So again, I think it comes down to personalized, custom, approach to things.
I agree with that, Kristen. Very well said. We do have another question here from Diane. Do you have dates for 2025 for the 2025 campaign? When should we expect to hear about preparations for it?
Great questions. So, and that gives us an opportunity to lead in and say, first, if you have not had a chance to complete the organization survey that we've
Yes.
sent out to everyone, please, 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 please do. We are in just about to, close it out at the end of the month and really begin to dive into the feedback that hopefully you all have given us. Part of that survey and the feedback is specifically regarding the dates and the plans for next year. It's not a surprise, though, to see that, since the beginning, the campaign has been growing organically, right? So it was focused to be a day of giving. And then it had these little periphery time frames around it that it was, kind of spreading out. Year 3 now, things are really, really rocking and rolling for that whole week around September 20th. So we've got some natural changes that are happening, and it's kind of looking like it's taking its shape as more of a giving week, perhaps. But all of that feedback in the nonprofit survey that we've sent out will be instrumental to us in the next month or so as we really narrow that down. I think what we'll do too is in this post-webinar email, we'll make sure that we include the link to that survey again, just in case you haven't had a chance to do it. It takes about 10 minutes, but that 10 minutes is worth so much to us in really getting things, ready to go for 2025. And what Kayla is going to say here is to check out these
Yes.
things at the bottom of our screen, right, Kayla?
Yep. So I jumped right over to this slide as soon as I saw when can we expect to hear about preparations. Something new this year that we did was we created a Facebook page and Instagram page for Mohawk Valley Gives. So if you're familiar in the past, really all of the promotion for Mohawk Valley Gives has been done on the community foundations platforms. So we're changing that so that they have their very own space. I think they've finally kind of reached that point where they need it. So we're going to be posting on there, updates about when registration will be opening, events that are happening pertaining to MV Gives, all of that good stuff. So if you haven't already followed us, please do. You can see the little handles here on the screen. And like Kristen said, that survey is super, super important. As the co-leads on this event, we are planning an event that is going to impact so many different organizations, and we really want it to work best for everyone, not just for us. So getting that feedback and hearing, what you experienced this year, what you liked, what you didn't like, all of those things is so important. So be on the lookout for that follow-up email after this webinar, because I think between the dashboard and the survey link and all of that good stuff, it'll be important to review it.
Absolutely. Thank you. So my goal was to get you all wrapped up by like 10:45. We're ahead. So if there's anything else that you want us to address now, we can. And if we're good otherwise, then we'll say have a lovely Thanksgiving, however you might do that. And maybe take a little moment for yourselves to rejuvenate as well.
Think we're good. I don't see any other questions popping up. We've got a thank you from Garrett at Herkimer Cornell Cooperative Extension.
Oh, thank you. Awesome.
All right. Well, I hope everyone has
right.
a great rest of their day and week. And please be on the lookout for that follow-up email.
Thank you so much, Kayla and team.
Have a great day.